Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast about music, education, and technology. I'm your host, Robby Burns.
Anyway, all of the reporting was that he got fired or pulled into these board meetings, which were all happening on Google Meet. And so the joke is that even $10 billion from Microsoft can't convince anybody to use Teams.
I gotta say, I am going through. Can we just do this? Can we?
Sure.
This is the topic, right?
Teams therapy.
Yeah, Microsoft Teams therapy. So I have a couple of follow-up possible news related topics in the notes here we're sharing, and you just touched both of them. So I just have in the note here, Microsoft has no taste, and
it's true.
I am in a place where for the past 3 or 4 months I have been, I wouldn't say forced to use Microsoft hardware and software, but motivated to for reasons. And so in both across consumer and enterprise software and hardware, I'm just mad all the time I'm using Microsoft stuff. And Teams is so the big thing. I actually talked about this a couple episodes ago with Elisa Jansen Jones. I've been, Slack is something that my music team uses to communicate, and we really like it. But they now limit you to only 90 days of saved messages unless everybody pays, and it's like $7 per person per month. It's like more than a middle school music team needs to pay.
Right.
But it used to be like a certain number of messages, and we were nowhere ever close to hitting that cap. And part of the nature of how I feel like, the middle school music job, this goes also for a team of people I work with who all co-direct our district's GT bands, which are honor groups that represent, lots of different kids across all schools in the county. And so our school system pays for the Microsoft suite. So this question came up okay, well, on my music team, we were asking, should we just move to Teams? It's got all the same features. We know there'll be worse implementations. Should we just suck it up and move to Teams? Well, meanwhile, I'm convincing this team of 6 honor band directors to use this as opposed to emailing each other all the time. So I convinced that team to move to Microsoft Teams, and then my school-based team says, all right, let's ditch Slack, because I cut my own self off of my thought earlier. So we basically, these are very seasonal jobs. So you need to be able to go back and see okay, well, for our fall concert last year, what did we, you know what I mean? So, or this honor group thing, we only really do every task one time a year. So we got to be able to go back at least a year.
Right.
Anyway, so Microsoft Teams, it's not just that it's clunky, badly designed, inconsistently designed across platforms, but it just does not work. No matter what I did to my macOS notifications, my iOS notifications, and the notifications inside of Microsoft Teams, I could not get the notifications to ever show up on any devices.
They're pretty inconsistent. Are you on your desktop? Are you on new Teams or are you on old Teams? Legacy Teams or whatever they called it.
How would I even know? That's also part of the problem.
So Teams is in the middle of a transition, and they've done the Windows desktop already, and they're doing the Mac desktop now. And you can choose, I think it might be up to your administrator as well if you can do this, but mine was allowed to, and we tend to not be allowed to do anything. But you can go and find the Teams download page, and you'll see 2 options. And if your Teams icon on your Mac doesn't have a very stupid, ugly little new badge in the bottom right corner of the icon, they just baked the new badge into the app icon, then you're using the old one. It might have even changed to be Microsoft Teams legacy support or something like that. Mine changed its name, and that's how I knew there was a new one. So if you go to whatever the Teams web pages and look for the Mac download, you should see 2 options, and you have to migrate your account. It does something with your cloud data. So once you make this transition, you have to, if you use more than one Mac, install the same new version on all of your Macs. You can't kind of go back and forth. But I have found that it has improved some things significantly when it comes to audio video stuff, which has not typically been one of their priorities, seemingly, is audio and video on the Mac. But previously, I could not use virtual audio devices, including my beloved loopback. I was completely lost for doing any class stuff with this thing because I couldn't loop back. And then I also couldn't use my cool hack with OBS to do a cool video thing for meeting with students or anything like that. So This I can now do in the new version of Microsoft Teams. And so far, that's been pretty good. The app is huge. It's like a gigabyte download for this dumb little app. I don't know if that's true. It might be an exaggeration, but it's way too big for what it is. And in part, it's because it's using the new Microsoft-y version. I think this is true. The new Microsoft-y version of Electron, which is the thing that GitHub has created to make like little web-based applications on your computer on the desktop that's based on the Chrome browser. And so Microsoft has gone and made their own version of it for Microsoft apps that's based on the Edge browser, which I think is also open source now. But I think that's part of why they made a bunch of these low-level changes as well. And that also might be part of why it's an enormous download. But yeah, new Teams.
It's really bad. I don't know. I think the damage is done. I don't know if I can convince either of these two groups of people to read downloads, because I just, while you were talking, I looked it up, and I swear I've never seen it like this in my applications before, but it is now called Microsoft Teams Classic. And yes, I am downloading the new version now. I don't know if I can convince these two groups of people to retry it, but I don't know if we want to. Like, one group was honestly the school level group just decided we would go back to Slack, and we're happy with that. And then the other group of people was just, we would just text each other. People were already texting each other to say, hey, I put something in Teams.
Hey, I sent you a Teams. Yeah, no, we've done that too. I was on a search committee recently, and we tried to do a search committee as a team in our university Microsoft Teams system. And I got to the point where I just refused to email people. And they would send an email, and then I would respond in Teams so that I could like try to steer everyone towards Teams. There's a lot of really nice things about Teams. Like, it's not all terrible, but it is part of this strategy that I am loath to encourage from Microsoft, where if they make a product that is like 70% as good as a competing product, but just include it in Office 365 that all of these institutions who are pinching pennies already are already paying for, then they can kind of kill Slack by offering everybody a crappy version of Slack for the included price of their Office 365. And the same thing with, like a crappy version of Google Docs and a crappy version of Dropbox and a crappy version of Trello and a crappy version of Airtable. All of these things exist, by the way. If you feel like your team would benefit from having like an Airtable style database kind of thing that you share, you can do that in a team. My team ended up using OneNote notebooks, which are terrible. I don't understand how anybody uses one. Like I commented on it like one time on social media, and one of my colleagues is like, I couldn't live without OneNote, and it's like, oh my god, it's just such a crisis of bad taste. Like I don't want to just click somewhere and have a cursor starting a text box in whatever part of this white blank infinite canvas that I clicked in. That's nonsense. That's absolute madness. But like we used it for this team, and it was very useful for us to have a completely like password protected internal system for coordinating like candidate schedules and what questions we're going to ask these candidates on their interviews and all these different things. It was super useful to have, but gosh, I really hated using some of those tools.
Yep.
I'm trying. One of my like personal initiatives that I tried and am continuing to try to do in my work is to not force other people to like. I don't want to visit my software snobbery upon my colleagues as much as I can. Like, yeah, I like Craft and think it's cool, or I like Obsidian and think it's cool, but I can't reasonably expect everybody I know to, it's like, just like you were saying, like to switch from one thing to another thing just because, hey, I found this cool new thing that's way better than, like, they don't even like use the things that they have very well, and nor should they. They're experts in like playing the cello good. And so anyway, I feel you. I don't know what to do about Teams. I've been trying to give in, and accept
I believe
Teams into my
in
heart.
what it could be, but it wasn't just the notification thing. By the time that we finally gave up on it, 2 out of the 4 of us, actually 1 out of the 4 of us on my school level team was just only knowing to check it when she would get an email that said you have a Teams. And then 2 of the 3 of us who were using it slightly more were just getting like a blank white screen when we would launch the app, and then nothing. It would just hang. And so we would like quit, shut down our computer, and we would just, once it got to the point where it didn't seem like any amount of updating, restarting, uninstalling, reinstalling was going to change, that we would just see like a giant blank white window, we decided it was time to move on. And I mean, if that's going to be the standard, I think I'm okay to live with the alternatives for now.
Yeah. I like, I'm on a bunch of committees for the death of joy and the initiator of all burnout at the university instructional level. And there are a number of them that I'm on that are really into Excel spreadsheets. And it's got to be Excel. I can't like just make a spreadsheet in numbers and send them a PDF. We all have to have our hands on the spreadsheet. And we've got spreadsheets in the files part of Teams. And it's not terrible. I mean, it's terrible because I have to use Excel. I love me a spreadsheet. I just don't like Excel. But because it's the one that's in Teams, you can basically use it like a Google Doc and everybody can edit it at the same time. And the same thing is true of any other Office product file that's in the Files tab. You can choose to open a Word doc or a PowerPoint deck or an Excel spreadsheet from the Files tab of Teams, and everybody can basically edit it simultaneously, which is pretty handy.
They've got some cool stuff, some cool ideas in their software, because that's the thing that I always liked about OneNote, but it's like the only thing I liked about OneNote was that you could like put a little table in there, and it was like a full-on Excel table, but inside your note in the context of whatever other stuff you were doing. They've got cool ideas, but yeah, can't deliver. I'll tell you, it's consumer products too. And this is an educated decision, and I don't regret it, but I'm having some issues. I bought an Xbox over the summer. And I've been a PlayStation guy for over maybe for like 2 decades now. I don't know when I think I had an Xbox 360. When was that? Like 2006 was maybe around.
You're asking the wrong nerd.
I don't know. And like it's good at doing most of the things that I wanted it to be good at doing, but like it's just interesting. Like there's interesting ideas there. So like one idea that's a very cool idea is there's this like quick start thing where somehow the Xbox like remembers somehow does fancy stuff with the memory of the system to remember your state of your last played game. So I think it's called quick start. Basically, it's like when you load a game that's not the currently running game, but it was a fairly recently running game, it like just jumps you straight back into where you left off without even having to like load the boot up screen or any of that stuff. Wow. So that's very cool until a third-party developer just doesn't quite have it 100% dialed in. And due to some sort of like bug that will probably never be fixed between the game Elden Ring, the developers of From Software and Microsoft, I guess this feature just didn't quite jive with the online mode of Elden Ring, which didn't quite jive with the way that saving your game works in Elden Ring, which lost me quite a few hours of data. In the beginning of October, and I was very sad. I had to go back and defeat some things to become Elden Lord. Did I tell you I'm an Elden Lord now?
Is that a degree that you can put on your wall?
Feels like it should be.
Probably about as much work as a master's degree.
I definitely felt like it was my part-time job for 2 months.
All right.
And I'm not even really done, but I did all the main stuff. Well, are we going to do like some fun stuff on this topic today?
We can do some fun stuff. Yeah.
As I was looking through last year, it's the holiday gift guide episode. And
you can tell because we started by complaining about Microsoft Teams.
You also touched, by the way,
the annual airing of grievances.
Where else and when else can it happen other than a time for cheer?
Right?
we didn't, and I hinted that you were touching on 2 of my possible follow-up topics. We don't need to talk about the open AI drama unless you really want to.
It's pretty strange.
It's pretty strange. Maybe I'll put a link to, I'll just say this. How about this? I really like a podcast called Decoder, and they're doing a fine job covering it. So maybe I'll link to their show.
I will. You know what? I don't have my iPhone in front of me. I will be right back because there's a podcast that I would also like to recommend.
Great. This is a bathroom break then for me.
What it's called.
I'll be back too.
sorry. So I came back and saw that you were gone, so I decided to go and press go on my coffee maker. So I have a coffee now.
Great decision. Awesome.
Also, do you have like a lens wipe situation that you like? So I buy these things by like the 200. I have a box of 220 of them here in my home office and in my office at school, and they're good for both glasses and for my screens.
How brave of you to assume that I ever clean my screens. I have this thing for my phone and my iPad. Anything mobile, I just kind of like wipe it across my shirt, and then if there's still little bits of whatever on it, I just like wipe it harder. Sure. I occasionally
These are like little alcohol wipe kind of things.
I use that kind of stuff occasionally, like kind of just all around the surface of the device, but it's not that often. On my Mac, I use the Whoosh brand.
Sure, I do love Whoosh. It's a little bit of a ritual, right?
Yeah, I actually, Whoosh is a great stocking stuffer. Great
I totally
segue.
agree.
Yeah, that's like if you just want to give someone something that they're going to use no matter who they are. Everybody's got screens in their life. Whoosh, it's just one of these things you can like, it's a little tiny mini spray bottle. It comes with a microfiber cloth. It's what I use to clean my MacBook.
Well, I keep these little Zeiss lens wipes in my backpack too, which is also great.
Yeah, and Whoosh has like also portable, like little
I got one of those too.
Yeah, kind of like you get when you eat crabs. You get a little wet wipey and a.
That's a very Maryland specific kind of reference.
That's
not a thing we do in the rest of the world.
I thought it as soon as I started that sentence. I realized who I was talking to, which is like, I am certainly in the minority of people who has ever laid crabs all over a brown paper covered table. And crabs, listen, crabs are delicious, and I'm proud that it's like our own little Maryland thing over here, but like that's the idea of a crab feast, like you're just gonna like take apart crabs and eat them in a large group, is the most overrated nonsense of all time.
It's definitely it's a project for sure.
It's not fun. I just want to eat.
I hear you there for sure.
Crawfish are a little easier to take apart, and I think just as delicious.
Totally. That's like a one step. That's a one step kind of situation. You don't need any special tools to open a crawfish. Yeah, I'm into that.
Totally. Whoosh, good. Stocking.
Whoosh, I'm into Whoosh.
Good stocking bit there. So, I mean, I took our note from when we did it last year, and I deleted some stuff. There was a lot of stuff that I thought was worth keeping on there. Mm-hmm. There wasn't stuff if I knew we should just keep celebrating it, but I figure, why not? It's this episode is a great time to kind of just review like what stuff we're using in our lives that is good. So I figure if there's some repeat stuff, that's cool. Maybe there's some new listeners. Yeah. So I just like did a quick edit there and added a hardware section because I figure it would be maybe cool. I don't know how many people are listening to this who are going to buy someone a phone, a watch, a computer, or some headphones, but I think, it happens. It's out there. It's good to just kind of know where the industry is at.
I think that's reasonable.
So I would like to talk about my phone, my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and say that it is probably my favorite phone I have ever owned. And I love the light titanium. I love the camera. The size I thought would be too big, but it doesn't feel too big because of how much the weight is reduced by being made of titanium. And I don't have any real complaints about it at all. It's probably the feeling of the edges and the material. The whole experience of the phone just feels like the best phone in years that I've had.
Yes, I have the same phone. I also have an iPhone 15 Pro Max. I kind of regret the Max, if I'm being perfectly honest. The 5X camera is great, and you can't get that on the not Max, or I totally would have gotten the regular size one. But here's the thing, Robby. The new action button, I never, ever, ever, ever use it because it is so far from my hand. And I feel like I would use it a lot more if I could reach it easily.
I'm so glad you brought this up. This is going to sound, the continuity is going to be off because I recorded the next episode in advance of this one, and I'm talking about how much I like the action button in that one. So forgive me, dear listeners.
That's okay.
While I say that my opinions have developed since that episode because I was in the experimentation and novelty stage of the action button during the recording of that episode. And hey, there are people who love the action button. You might get some ideas listening to the next episode and think, I'm going to do that. But I can tell you that where I'm at right now, at least, like several months after having the action button, is right where you are, David, which is that it's a little hard to reach. And if I'm being totally honest, I have like this really fancy shortcut set up that depending on which focus mode I'm in, it does a different thing. And most of the, the modes that I live in are work and personal. That's like 90% of my usage. And in those modes, it just creates a little like pop-up to add a new task, which would be so useful if I were like in Safari and not in my to-do app and wanted to just quickly add something. But because it's a little hard to reach, I'm finding that like more times in the day, it's partly that it's like not as easy to use as I want it to be for that reason, but it's also just partly due to the fact that like I'm finding, you're not going to believe this, but I'm finding that more often in the day I want to toggle the mute switch than to add a task. And I'll tell you why. I think you can maybe explain this to me because I feel like you will have a better technical understanding. I'm pretty sure that the iPhone 15 is treating audio playback differently than the iPhone 14 because of this option. Because I have apps that on my 14, if it's on mute mode and then I hit the volume up button, it'll start playing the audio for me. Like if the phone is on mute, it'll like just for that instance of that app, it'll like turn the audio on until I'm done using it. I am finding that to not behave the same way. I don't know what my experience is, but like I'm just finding that I want that mute switch, or even just better yet, the camera. If I would set the action button to the camera, I think I would probably be using it more than I am right now.
So mine is set to the camera, and I still don't use it because the times that I would usually want to use it, it's times when I want to like be kind of subtle and quiet about opening the camera app to take like a candid shot of something my students are doing or something my cat is doing or whatever. And it's more of an ordeal for me to move my hand around the phone to reach the button than it is to open the home screen and go to the camera or use the lock screen shortcut to open the camera. And so I just don't ever do that. The only place that I recall seeing the kind of behavior that you're seeing where it's like playing a video on mute and then you hit the volume up button and it turns the sound on is in like Instagram Reels. And I have found that the audio turn on, turn off thing in Instagram is completely bizarre. I have no idea how it works because it seems completely inconsistent every time I open the application. So, but I don't really have that problem with the mute switch. And I, like any sane iPhone user, have never had my sound on for my phone ever under any circumstances.
So I'm usually there with you, but like there's a couple of times where I want it on. So recent app pick of the week, Pokemon Smile is what I use to get my child to brush his teeth at night. And the sound will not play out of the app. The whole thing is like an audio visual experience. It's got to have sound. So I'm finding myself reaching for that button. Well, I haven't reprogrammed it yet, but I'm reaching for Control Center to toggle it on and off. Because it used to be that if my phone was always on mute, I would hit the up button once and then it would unmute the audio. But now that's not working for some reason. I've got to like do it at the system level, like from the Control Center. So I don't know. Maybe that's a bug in the app. Maybe it's user error. But I'm with you, though. I'm just not using it as much as I thought. My thinking with the camera was that I actually would want to use it specifically when I'm holding it like in a landscape orientation because my index finger would be kind of hovering right over that spot. Does that make sense? Like, because it's already easy enough to get to the camera in a portrait mode because you just swipe you lift your phone up to the lock screen and then you just swipe to the left to get straight to the camera. I don't know if everybody knows that, but that's a fun little shortcut.
I did not. Well, yeah. Okay, that I did know.
So, all right, that's interesting to get a little bit of action button update. Yeah, because I got to rethink it for sure.
Yeah, I like I said, I really, really like the idea, and I want to like and use it, and I really do think I want to like and use it for the camera. But with the phone as big as this thing, it's not happening.
I'd be curious to know. I mean, it's the kind of thing you can only really know with weeks of experience, but I would be curious to know if it is really that much easier to use on a smaller phone. Because part of it is also just the way that you have to grip. I'm always hitting that like lock button when I try to get my volume sometimes, and the action button is not really that different, although it's like a little higher and even more out of the way.
Do you usually hold your phone in your left hand or your right hand?
Ooh, I'm pretty even, but it goes in my left pocket though.
Okay, so I'm a right pocket, right hand phone person, and so it is as far away as it can possibly be from my index finger. And I don't have small hands. I don't have giant hands. I feel like maybe slightly larger than average hands. And this is not is not a comfortable thing for me to do.
Yeah, if I used it in my left hand more often, it would be easier to reach now that I'm thinking about it, because it would be under right about where my thumb rests. Just kind of slide it up.
So, but I will say the one thing that I am using a heck of a lot on my iPhone 15 Pro, and I don't think this goes back to all iPhones, but I think it does go back to iPhones 14, maybe Pro, and maybe, I don't know if it's the regular iPhones 14, but standby mode is amazing. It seems like such a stupid thing, but it's amazing. So I have standby mode, if you're not using it, is a way to turn your phone into just like an ambient display of like a clock or a picture with the time or a widget or two. It's really nice, and it will happen anytime your phone is positioned like horizontally and charging. It doesn't have to be wireless MagSafe charging. It will work if it's plugged in as well, if you're a devout plugger-inner of your phone. But I have MagSafe chargers on my desk at home, my desk at work, and my nightstand. It works great in all of those places. I have had colleagues come into my office at school and look at this thing on my desk and say, "That's a really nice desk clock. Where did you get that?" I told them that's actually just my phone, and they're blown away because they didn't know that happened that way. So it's really cool. I usually, in my bedroom, it just has the time, and it turns red, and like a really dim red when it's nighttime, so it doesn't like keep you up or anything. And at work, I have it show me I think I have it set to show me the weather in a Carrot weather widget, and the time and date in a Widgetsmith widget. So I really like it. Are you using standby?
A lot, yeah. In fact, we're gonna get to a pick later, like what my favorite dock is, because I've bought a bunch for my different desks. So I like to have definitely my calendar events on one side of that view, and then on the left side, I'm kind of alternating between like my next up tasks in my task app or the analog clock. I like the look of that analog clock alongside my calendar.
I don't like the analog clock doesn't do it for me. But I guess, you know what I actually have? I might have lied a little bit ago. I have my calendar on the side, not the weather most of the time. My next up calendar things, which is useful because doesn't matter how many weeks into the semester we are, I will always forget who my next lesson is.
Oh, I
know that I have a next lesson at 11:30. I just have no idea who it is.
Oh, I have all of my classes.
I'll find out when they show up.
My classes in my schedule are all in the calendar.
So are mine, yeah.
Yeah, I have them in there, and it's like I have alarms too that tell me when to end the classes. Those are on my watch, and for whatever reason, of all the apps that sync between the watch and the phone, their data, that is, the alarms part of the clock app will not sync something you create on the phone to your watch. Like, it'll notify you that the alarm is happening on the watch, but it will not show you the alarm itself, which I like because I use sometimes at work, the Siri watch face, which shows you the calendar event that's currently happening. And then underneath of it, if you have an alarm that happens before your next class, it'll show you the alarm in sequential view, like in a timeline.
Oh, cool.
And I like that. So I have them all on my watch, but the only sensible way to do it, which isn't sensible, is to use Siri. And I have to write a script for myself at the beginning of each school year for how to get the times correct. Because it's like, it'll be like, hey, computer, set an alarm called End Wind Ensemble every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 11:06 a.m. It'll be that. So I have to write it all out.
The big clock in standby will also show you when your next alarm is, and I find that to be very useful as just like a security reminder of that I have set my alarm for the next morning when I go to bed. So it will show that my next alarm is whatever time I get up the next morning.
It'll actually remember if you use my MagSafe charger to charge it, it'll remember which ones are which and like save different widgets to different ones. But I tried to get fancy with that.
It's gotten pretty inconsistent for me. I think it's maybe gotten better in some of the more recent updates, but mine would always forget. And I've got licensed MagSafe chargers in most of my spaces.
I do too. Yeah, maybe that's part of the reason I got discouraged and stopped really trying, but I also just didn't really feel like it was that valuable to customize it. I mostly just it's fine to have the calendar and the time. I don't know. Like on
It's
my
a
desk,
really nice looking desk clock. Like I used to have to like figure out where to look to find what time it is in my office, and I was seriously considering buying a wall clock for my office, but this is much nicer.
it's so good looking. Yeah, I agree. Well, it's the main reason why I bought a dock for all of my
Hmm.
desks, but we'll get to that soon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep wanting to jump ahead. All right,
No, it's all good.
we'll get there.
Well, we can talk, while we're talking about all of our like computing stuff thingies, I'll say I'm using the last generation Apple Watch and still liking it quite a lot. I have a little bit of a fear of missing out for the Apple Watch Ultra, but I think I will probably maybe consider that next go round.
Hmm.
So that puts me on the
I
Series 8, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a Series 6. So I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm not an Apple Watch power user, but I don't feel the need to update my watch until it's really struggling to make it through the day. And we're almost to that point with this thing. I think 2024 is going to be my watch upgrade year. But as long as it gets me like through the day pretty easily, then I don't feel super compelled to spend any money on a watch every year.
I feel the same way. They're also not like as aggressively adding stuff to them year over year as they once were. And
I don't see myself going with the Ultra though, mostly for price.
yeah, it's a big jump. I don't also love the look of it, but I don't know. We'll see. That's for future me to decide.
Do you think that next year is the year it's going to change the look of the device significantly in 2024?
I don't know. Rumors suggest if not this coming year, then probably the one after. Will it change the look dramatically though? I just know there's a whole bunch of health sensors they want to add to it that are maybe this year, but also maybe not this year, maybe soon though.
I don't know. Like the thing has basically, if it's turned off, it looks exactly the same as the Series 0, the very first Apple Watch.
What would
right?
you do with it though? I don't know what I would really change about it.
I don't know. Some people think they want a round watch. I think that's not a great way to display most kinds of information.
Yeah, I mean, I get that it looks better on your wrist as a watch, but as far as like what the screen is communicating to you, that
Right.
I've never seen the software look attractive on a circular smartwatch.
Right. I mean, that's not how text works, right? Text is in rectangles. So
There's some cool interface stuff though I've seen. Like I really like the ones I've seen where the whole like outer rim of the circular shaped watch is like a spinny dial, kind of like a Nest thermostat.
yeah.
I think that's cool. Apple
Well,
keeps
that's how
messing
like
it
dive
up.
watches work. Like mechanical dive watches have a little spinny thing on the outside.
I think Apple keeps messing it up with the Apple Watch buttons. I want to clarify my stance. So not only have they made regressive changes for the current software update for the Apple Watch that came out this past fall, but I've for long believed that the more comfortable button to press is not the crown, but the side button. And I use Siri and the crown way more often than I do that side button, you know what I mean? I don't even remember what it did. It opens Control Center now, doesn't it? See, I'm confused.
Currently, it opens Control Center. It used to open your recently opened apps.
Which is better, but I think that makes way more sense as the digital crown, which is the same place you use to get to your app grid. To me, it's like app grid, one tap, app, recently used apps, double tap, just like a phone. And then that side button, if you ask me, should be like the side button on the phone, which does power, but also Siri. Because I use Siri quite a bit on the watch. I do sometimes just lift it up and talk to it, but I would really prefer most of my interactions. That button is just really cozy, and I'm never using it for its intended purpose.
The thing that I always get mixed up, if you long press one of those things, it will invoke Siri. If you long press the other one of those things, it starts an emergency call. So, and I can never remember which one is which.
Yeah.
And so I always have to cancel an emergency call before I invoke Siri.
Yeah, the other thing too is like, and this is true on the watch and the phone, they should be as consistent as they possibly can, which they're not. And they have pretty much a quite similar button layout these days. But the other thing is that like,
how cool would it be to have a digital crown on the phone?
It would be. I mean, I like the digital crown.
I don't know
really
what I
like
would do with it. I just
stuff.
really like it as a fidget toy. It feels good.
It does feel good. It does feel good. Yeah. Whew. Do you have a play date? Because you could just play with your crank.
I do not have a play date. I had a play date on back order, and I waited patiently for about 6 months, and then it got pushed back again one more time, and I just gave up on it, and I put that money toward a Nintendo Switch OLED this past summer, and I think I made the right choice.
You absolutely did. The Apple Watch remains good. I'll say the same about headphones. We had AirPods on our list last year. I'll say this is probably the giftiest thing on our hardware list to talk about. I really do quite like all varieties of AirPods. My favorite is still the basic non-pros because they stay in my ears better. And I'm also usually listening to spoken word or making phone calls when I have them in.
My favorite are the AirPods Pro. I will also add, I don't remember if we mentioned this last year, if you are buying one of these things, they've been around for a while. And the thing about buying Apple stuff is that Apple never discounts anything, but it will discount its wholesale price to other retailers. And so you will find sales on Apple products in other third-party retailers' stores. So if you want to buy AirPods Pro and you don't want to pay $250, which is their retail price from Apple, check wherever you buy electronics normally. You can look on Amazon, you can look on Best Buy, you can look at Target, like wherever you normally buy electronics. It's probably, if it's going to be on sale, it's going to be on sale in one of those places and never from Apple. So that's probably where I would look. And I, like Robby said, everybody's got like I feel like it really comes down to personal preference and in how you like things in your ears. I personally much prefer the AirPods Pro, and Robby prefers the regular AirPods. So do what you want to do, but I probably at this point would not get them from Apple.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just a note, since we put Mac in here too, I will say that Macs are better than ever. I love my M1 MacBook Pro I bought a couple of years ago. It's going very strong. I will say, since I get asked this question a lot, I think that a MacBook Air is the right computer for most people and for most music teachers. Unless you're doing pretty heavy stuff with audio or video, I don't think you need to really consider a MacBook Pro. However, I know that there are people out there who just really know like that the word pro means nice, and they have maybe used a MacBook Pro before and had no problems with it and really like it and respect, that Apple brands their nicest, fastest computer as such. And so if that's you and you want to spend the money, you're gonna get a great computer. But for most people, I do say the Air is a whole lot of a machine, of machine for what it is.
I agree. I totally agree. I convinced my university to buy me a Pro only because I do sometimes work with large sample libraries and want more RAM than you're allowed to fit into the Air. But I had like a backup option if they told me that they wouldn't buy me a Pro, that I was going to put that money into a M2 MacBook Air, because those are, like Robby just said, incredible machines.
Oh, actually, let me say one quick thing about the iPad too while we're on this Apple train here. I think for iPad Pro, a lot more musicians and teachers that I know are doing their sheet music off of them. I don't know anyone who's happy with anything other than the 12.9 inch. It seems to be where most of my teaching professionals and colleagues that I know land. I would say if you're thinking of one, you should probably wait if you want to get an iPad Pro right now, because is it safe to say probably in 2020 it's going to be, who even knows?
Who knows? Who knows? If you need the thing now, buy the thing now. There's no sense in waiting if you need the thing now.
So long without an update that it's like, oh gosh, I really would love there to be one. But it also, like, I haven't needed an update this whole time. I'm still using a 2018 iPad Pro, and it is definitely showing age, but like, I'm not like, I will probably buy one if it comes out in 2024, but I'm not like hurting, like it's not like totally like useless and broken. Like it still does things for me.
So my podcast co-host Philip Rothman likes to tease me about having a lot of iPads. I don't know, Robby, if you've listened to any of the probably 3 most recent episodes of Scoring Notes. In all 3 of them, Philip has teased me about how many iPads I have, which is currently 3. And that's because one of them belongs to the university that I work for. But I have 2 12.9-inch iPads. One is my personal 2018 iPad Pro, and one is the iPad Pro M2, which is the most recent 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and they behave very similarly. And the battery life on my newer one is much better just because it's 5 years newer. But other than that, it's very difficult to tell them apart. I can tell them apart if I put them side by side. I can see that the screen on the new one is better, but I'm not like disappointed by the screen on the older one if I don't have them side by side.
I
But if you
used
do
to,
happen to have two of them side by side, you can do some very cool things with Fourscore.
yeah, definitely. I used to update my iPad every couple of years, and now I would say the cycle is decidedly much more like a Mac, like a minimum of 4 to 5 years or longer for your computer, depending on who you are and what you need. Is there a
Yep.
good video I can link of that 2-page Fourscore thing you just mentioned? Because I would like people to have a quick way to see.
I think I just like made a video and sent it to you. I can probably put it somewhere that you can see it. But basically you can, if you've got two full-size pages on two different iPads, you can turn them together. So when you turn the page on one iPad, it flips them both. Just so you'd have two pages visible all the time, just like you would in any other book document.
Hey, speaking of books,
Ooh, well done, Robby.
we have a category of books. We have other computery topics later on in the outline, but yeah, I figured looks like we should a book pick here. I will shout out a book from last year's list, by the way, that I am still working through. Critique is Creative. Thank you for that update.
It's a really good book.
Do you have, well, I mentioned it. Probably you would explain what it is better than I would, though.
Yeah, Critique is Creative is a book by Liz Lerman, who's a choreographer who developed a system of creative feedback that she calls the critical response process. And her initial book about this was called Critical Response Process, or maybe like Liz Lerman's Critical Response Process or something like that. But anyway, this is basically an update of that book. They're both still available, but Critique is Creative has a description of the process that's a little bit updated from the previous one, but it's basically the same. And then it has a bunch of like case studies and contributions from other people about how they've implemented critical response in their practices. And so brief overview of critical response is that it's a very structured system of giving feedback either one-on-one or in a big group setting that helps the artist or creator or whatever to figure out like what is important to them about the work that they're creating and to what extent they are successful in expressing that to an audience. And it can work for all different kinds of settings. I teach university composition students, and we use it frequently in getting feedback from our composition studio classes in a way that doesn't have the expectation that all students are writing in the same styles of music and have the same creative goals. So anyway, it's a really, really cool book. Highly recommend. Very readable. Critique is Creative.
Yeah, I'm enjoying going deep into the topic. I had a jazz theory and arranging professor I guess I was in grad school when I took those two classes. And she would always just like come back to this idea of balance and intent when you're creating something. And that's always stuck with me as like a really kind of top level way of thinking about giving someone feedback. Like, you know, what are you trying to communicate? And then are your ideas consistent with themselves in meeting that goal? And if not, it makes it a lot easier to like kind of remove ego from the conversation when you're starting with like, what are your goals? What are you trying to get out of this thing that you have made or done? And then, you know, saying like, okay, here are, now that you have expressed that, here are the things that are, you know, coming closer to meeting that goal. And then here are things that are inconsistent with that. And I don't know, that's just it's a very nice extension of that idea, which was a seed that was planted in my life long, long ago.
And I'll also just add parenthetically, if you are not in the kind of situation where you are regularly, you know, either giving or receiving feedback from large groups in the kinds of settings that I was just describing, this has also informed my one-on-one teaching as well. So I don't go through the process in exactly the same way because it doesn't really make sense in that setting, but the principles are still really important to me, and so have informed the kinds of conversations I have in composition lessons as well.
And my actual book pick for this year is super related to that point. So I'll just connect them for you here and say Grading for Growth, which you recommended to me. So you're responsible for all of the books in this discussion.
I've often described myself as responsible for all of the books in the United States. Welcome, readers.
Yeah. So I too do committees. I am on a committee
Yay.
at my school, and I'm, you know, like basically at this point doing research on alternative grading practices. And we've talked through a handful of books before. I know unGrading is a book that we actually, for the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord server, one summer we did a book club, and a handful of us read that book and talked about it on there. You can join that by supporting me at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. So Grading for Growth is a book that actually, now that I'm kind of into it, I'm realizing would have maybe had for me been a better introduction to some of these practices than
It's
ungrading.
much more practical.
Yeah, and it also like introduces the topic a little bit more clearly. And one thing that I'm really just reminded of any time I'm reading any book about alternative grading practices is that the key thing that most educators are going for when they think of alternative grading practices is to have a tighter feedback loop where students are just receiving more meaningful feedback more of the time with less, attempts at the subject in between each of those. And teaching in the performing arts is an exceptionally awesome kind of way to look at these practices, because we are like, our loop is really tight compared to, say, like if you're a teacher in a classroom and you're maybe like on a quiz or a test or a check-in or some Canvas assignment once or twice a week, kind of seeing what students know. I know if they know it the second they start blowing through their instruments, and I can stop immediately and fix it. And so that's been kind of an interesting way to look at a lot of these grading practices, because to be honest, like anything, the more you read about it, the more it just seems kind of like an exercise in like, how do you want to talk about the thing rather than are you actually changing the thing? And sometimes we change the way we talk about things, thinking or attempting to change the actual thing, but we don't. So Grading for Growth is kind of interesting because it's giving me a little bit like a lay of the land of some of the conventional vocabulary for a lot of these grading practice discussions, but ultimately is making me aware more of like where mine are kind of ahead maybe of like education on the whole, and where do I need to pause and look at like, making it even better. So thank you for that book suggestion.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I would also just second the recommendation. It's a really, really interesting book, a really good book. And I think it's pretty interesting that it's coming from instructors in higher ed primarily for that particular book. A lot of the literature around alternative grading focuses on primary and secondary education. And so I think there are some steeper hills to climb in terms of the tradition in higher ed and the importance of GPA to all sorts of things in higher ed, from scholarships to Latin honors and all those kinds of things. And so I think that is a place where we haven't had a lot of good models. So anyway, just wanted to add that and second the recommendation for Grading for Growth. The book I have added to the gift guide is a book called On Music Theory by Philip Ewell. If you are a musician and are on the internet, you may have noticed the discussion of music theory and the white racial frame, which is Philip Ewell's 2019 plenary address to the Society for Music Theory and subsequent article in Music Theory Online about the racial bias and the way that we frame discussions of music and music theory in our classrooms. And Ewell really kind of addresses some pretty fundamental assumptions that we have about what is music, what counts as music that is worthy of study, really problematizes the hidden curriculum, the things that we teach without realizing that we are teaching, about what's important and unimportant and worthy of study and unworthy of study. And so this book is a more thorough discussion of all of those things, as well as his personal experience in trying to draw attention to this issue. And he does, in the end, come with a series of recommendations that are challenges in their own right to a lot of very traditional assumptions about what music studies are. And he's, again, tends to be focused at the higher ed level, at the university level. But I think a lot of the principles can be applied to all kinds, not just even music studies. And, I try to also emphasize when I recommend this book to people that yes, it is a book that has music theory in its title. It is written by a music theorist, Phil Ewell, and it is published by a scholarly press. I think this is from the University of Michigan Press. It is not a theory book. It is not a theory textbook. It is not a theory research monograph. It is a book about the discipline of music theory. There are there are very few discussions of technical music concepts that would, like I feel like I could give this book to my mom and she would basically understand what's going on. So I would highly recommend On Music Theory. I think it's a really important discussion for us to continue having. And, if you're doing anything in music instruction, you should think about the things that Yul is talking about here, and how you choose to take that knowledge forward and use it in your classroom is entirely up to you. But I think this is an important thing that we should all be thinking about.
Awesome. I'm glad you added that little bit towards the end, because I was going to ask you if it would be accessible to.
Yeah, it's very accessible. Also, unlike a lot of like scholarly monographs, it's like not $90 or something. It's like $30. It's like a regular paperback price.
All right. Well, that brings us back to computery stuff, but this time software instead of hardware. We have to have the same philosophical discussion we did last year, don't we, about software and hardware, and like, is it appropriate to buy someone software or to want software as a gift? And I will say what I did last year, which is yes. I will also say later in this episode that I'm introducing some physical media back into my life.
Oh.
Yeah, or at least...
Look at you.
Yeah, or at least the desire for physical media, which we'll talk about. But I will say that software is good. It is in many cases, I would say, like, things that have enabled me to be more proficient at my job and outside of my job have been software, not things that I have bought. And so I'm here to preach the great news of software, yet again, starting with my music service of choice, which is still Apple Music. I'm still using Apple Music. It's fine. Good, even, I might say. I have issues with like the app, like the design of the app, but as far as like delivering me the music, it seems to be the least bad one. And I think most music, musicians and teachers need something like this in their life, at least for like the utilitarian purpose of being able to call up a song real quick. I will say also that YouTube Premium remains a thing that I'm willing to shell out $12 or $13 for a month. It's totally changed my relationship with YouTube. I hate to say it, but YouTube's got all the video. All the video is on YouTube, whether we like it or not. And for that reason, it's nice to have that be an ad-free and otherwise premium experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also, because I am, irresponsible, I subscribe to Apple Music and Spotify and YouTube Premium. And I use all three of them in different ways, but I do listen to music in all three places. I would also add, when it comes to Apple Music, a kind of side part of that is Apple Music Classical, which, as we are recording now, is now finally available as a native iPad app. So that's a pretty useful thing. So if you're not hip to Apple Music Classical, you should check that out. If you are already an Apple Music subscriber, you get it. It's part of Apple Music. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. I'm just not realizing that you had put some of these in the services section, which is next, but they're kind of, the line is blurry between software services.
I just added YouTube Premium to services after you mentioned it, but because it's really good.
It is. I really like it. And I think, I don't know if anyone's ever going to be able to compete with YouTube for video. Is it like, what other thing of the internet is like the only thing for this type of, media to go? That people can, like, of course, freely and easily share it to. I cannot think of anything. Like, what if there was only Apple Music? That would be crazy, right? Or, I don't know. I don't get it. But it's where we've landed.
It's worth it to me just to never have to see an ad when I'm trying to show a YouTube video in class. Like, that's the worst, when I'm like showing a YouTube video in class and there's like an ad for Tide or whatever.
Totally. All right. Well, I think the next software pick is you have put Audio Hijack on here. Couldn't agree more with that one.
Audio Hijack is a delight. It is what I am currently using to record my half of this conversation, and it is just one of the great audio power tools. It's not, I don't know how much it costs right now, but it's not wildly costly. And they just added this very cool new AI informed block. So basically, Audio Hijack is a tool for recording audio and manipulating audio from a number of different software sources within your computer. You don't have to plug things into other things to be able to record something. So if you want to record part of a FaceTime call, or if you want to take a small audio clip from a long YouTube video or something, this is one of the easier ways to do that. And it allows me in this, as I mentioned earlier, to in this conversation with Robby, I have my audio being recorded in one audio file, and then I have everything that Robby is saying as a backup being recorded into a different audio file. And with this new feature that's part of Audio Hijack, the transcribe block, I can even have it transcribe very well, I might add, the words that I am saying, and I can even tell it the source from my microphone is going to be called David, and the source from Zoom is going to be called Robby, and it will basically write out a pretty darn good transcript of our entire conversation. And so it's very fun and very handy to use. You can even use this on audio that you're not creating. Like I said, you can grab audio from any application in your computer. If you want to just make a pretty good transcript of a audio file that you have from a meeting so you can search it easily, or if you've got a long YouTube video or a documentary or something, if you can get the audio into Audio Hijack, you can get a transcript of that thing, and it's super, super useful. That's Audio Hijack.
I love it. I use it too. I'm also recording myself with it at this very time.
Are you using the transcribe block?
I'm going to use different software to do that kind of thing.
It uses, I think, the same AI thing. I think they all use Whisper from OpenAI.
Yeah. I do want to talk about Things by Cultured Code. This is.
Are you Things? Are you a Things now?
I am a Things. I am a Things right now. So I tried to make a switch last summer, and then I was reminded by a friend of the show, Craig McClellan, that was never going to stick because if I didn't actually have to depend on it for any school tasks. So I'm in the middle of I've successfully did 2 concerts, and I'm doing this honor group amongst all my other stuff, in Things for the past several weeks. So
I might have to give Things a try. I don't have a current Things license. I think Things 3 is the current Things. Is that right?
That is correct.
So I have not tried Things since Things 2. So I might give it a shot. I'm fully prepared to go on a task management odyssey and come back with something different than I'm currently using, because I'm not thrilled with what I currently have. I currently use number 2 DO, and it's fine, but it's made by one person who develops for Mac, Windows, iOS, and Android. So it doesn't ever get like super advanced operating system level features, and it syncs over, the way I have it set up, syncs over Dropbox, and so it doesn't do a great job of syncing in the background on my devices, which is annoying because it means the badge doesn't update unless I open the application. So I'm very interested in trying something else. I'm not sure Things is the one for me, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
It's definitely the nicest looking, and
yes,
sometimes I'll tell you this: since I switched to it, zero fiddling. I'm not. It's invisible to me, and there's a couple of things it doesn't do where I'm a little bit kind of like stressed that it's like, okay, I gotta like, not to mention just that I'm like changing a system that I'm used to,
right.
So I'm like having to think about it a little bit more consciously. But in terms of like, oh no, my task is not visible to me right now because I'm looking at the wrong search filter, like there's none of that. In fact, it's really easy to find stuff. There's not even a shortcut for finding. You just start typing on the keyboard what task, and it's like searches tasks, projects, areas of focus, like all of it. So it's good. I will say I actually
do want it to hide stuff from me, though. That's my problem with Things, is I want it to be better about hiding. I want to have more control over not seeing things.
I've found that the tagging, so the way that I think that they get away from not having more of that is that their tagging system is more seamlessly integrated into all views. So almost every task list you can look at shows you like some tag names of stuff that's in that list at the top, and then you can really easily filter. Now, it's not very advanced filtering. You can't say like, show me everything between these dates with this tag. But I'm also finding too that in this switch, I got rid of a lot of tasks. Because I'll tell you what, I did before I moved to Things. It wouldn't be the show without a task talk, would it?
No.
I should just make this a segment, a reoccurring segment, task talk. So I did.
This should be the whatever summer episode that you and I do, is just like software therapy.
We will go get all into it. I will tell you though that I did a week of reminders and a week of Todoist before ultimately settling on
Okay.
things, and I moved everything every single time.
Oh my gosh.
And
That's a
it was
lot.
well, I purged like 90% of my task list. I was like, this all doesn't need to be in here. I keep thinking about it like having a box of junk. It's like if you've got a box of junk and there's something you haven't used in over a year in that box of junk, you should probably trash it. And I'm thinking tasks are the same, even though they're like in my mind and on my screen, not in my space. So I just let a lot of it go. And
You just reminded me that Todoist is another one that I want to give a shot at.
So here's the thing. The more I used and liked Todoist, the more I realized that Reminders does like everything that Todoist does, and free without upcharging you, and with more native design to Apple platforms, and like almost the same implementation, like in terms of the concept. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
My frustration with them both is there's nothing that's like a today date or a defer date. It's everything is just showing up in your calendar when it's due, which is frustrating.
Okay, that's a deal breaker for me. That's out.
Okay, so then
I can cross that off now.
Yeah. So, but because I've been using Todoist for collaborative tasks this year and having great success, but then when I went on this little odyssey, I was like, oh man, like reminders, like I used Todoist with my student teacher earlier this year, and it was very effective for like communicating stuff between ourselves. But now I'm realizing that the whole system could have been built in reminders.
As long as everybody is only using Apple devices.
True. So if they're not,
so I have enough colleagues who are Android and or Windows that I would have to do something else for that.
All right. Well, that was a nice task talk. Anyway, things is if you're looking to, give someone some software, the gift of software, or yourself, the gift of software, there's nothing better than a piece of software that is going to make you or help you. Nothing that's going to make you manage your life better, but it will help you manage your life better.
I've always said that I'm just one task manager away from finishing my novel.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Hey, this next one will be a hit for sure. I left it on. It was on last year, but it got a great update since then.
So I suspect you use this app. This is Farrago, another Rogue Amoeba gem. I suspect you use it more than I do.
I use it every day in band rehearsal as a soundboard for both play-along tracks that are frequently used and fun, goofy sound effects that I use in class. And this is just like, it's not really that you can't make an iTunes playlist with all of your tracks queued up, but there's just something about like being able to organize these MP3s in a colorful grid of squares that makes it so much visually more easy to find stuff when you're also teaching at the same time. So I love to have them. I made these scale exercise play along tracks, which of course you can buy from my store at robbyburns.com/store. And I have color coded them in order of circle of fifths. And it's just very easy to get through them during warm-ups, during rehearsal. I use a lot of play-alongs. But then I also have fun things like the Jeopardy theme and the Staples That Was Easy button. I've got an air horn for surprise scale tests. That's a fun one. A sarcasm bell. That's when your sarcasm is really dry, and then you need a bell
to just let people know
to tell them. So it's a great time. It's also exceptionally awesome for people who might be running musical theater productions or might need a sequence of queued tracks, because you can organize a set in order of like, here's a bunch of tracks I need. You can like see them from like an top down view, and it gives you a lot of interesting features on top of that as well. Like you can on an MP3 by MP3 basis, you can like change the volume, change like does it loop or not, where is the start and the end of the loop point, all sorts of nice little editing features right built into the sidebar of the app.
I use it for teaching online. It's a great option when I'm teaching music theory classes online. I don't have a Mac hooked up to the audio system while I'm teaching normally, and so I have a different system of playing audio when I'm in the classroom teaching. But when I'm online teaching, I have a pretty cool system of using Farrago to play all of my class examples, and I'm a big fan of that. And I do that through Loopback, which is another Rogue Amoeba product. Yeah, sweet. It's pretty cool. I don't think I use it quite as often as you do, but if I taught most of my classes online, I'd probably use it a lot more.
Yeah, I love it. And I don't know any music teachers who don't love it, who have bought it. I have convinced a few of my colleagues to get it, and they talk about it to me every time I see them. Can we skip this next one too? Oh no, I didn't
Sure.
know who added this. I think it was just left over from last year.
Okay. I used it a lot. In fact, I just got a message from Philip Rothman earlier today, just reminding me that version 2 is on sale this week. He wanted to make sure that I was up to date. But
Okay, well then let's mention it.
well,
Yeah,
well, I'll just say it fast. So this next one is a suite of apps from Affinity, which is formerly known as Serif Labs, or maybe they are still. But Affinity Designer is like a drop-in replacement for Adobe Illustrator, which is a vector graphic software. Affinity Photo is like a drop-in replacement for Adobe Photoshop, and Affinity Publisher is like a drop-in replacement for Adobe InDesign, which is a document layout tool. And I am a big fan of all three of them. The one I've found myself using the most recently is Affinity Publisher. I've been using it to produce scores. So when I make a score, I use Dorico for music notation. And at the end of that process, I like to put the front matter together in a document app. And so I used Affinity Publisher to create a title page and the information page that goes on the inside and put all that together. And I also used it, probably the largest thing I've ever done in it, and hopefully will ever do in it, was my tenure portfolio that I submitted earlier this year. And that's about like 750 pages. It has a bunch of documents that are all brought in from different sources that are in this one giant PDF file. It has scores, it has student evaluations, it has letters, it has forms, it has internal tables of contents that all link to one another and link to different sections of it. And it's a really sophisticated software for putting stuff like that together. So and the best part of it is it's a one-time purchase. It's like, I think normally $50 each, and that covers you on Mac and Windows. And it also works pretty well on iPad, though I think that's a separate purchase. And you can get them in a bundle, I think, for usually $100. And if it's still on sale by the time you hear this, it's even less than that. I think maybe $75. So definitely check out the Affinity apps if you ever do anything with graphics or document layouts.
you can do as a teacher so much with a limited knowledge of how to make a photo or a design look reasonable. Just having like basic, rudimentary knowledge of design and photo apps. And I will say for publisher, awesome for concert programs. And learning the tools of one of these three apps affords you a little bit of like a head start in the others because they share a very similar design philosophy to themselves.
They even, I don't know how well known this is, they actually share exactly the same file format. So you can open a publisher file in Designer and vice versa. They have different file extensions so that your operating system knows which application to open if you double click them. But other than the extension, the formats are identical. And so you can open them in one another. It's really cool.
That is news to me. I appreciate you saying that. All right, I think this last one is you.
This last one is me. Yes, it is. Musio. So if you have ever been curious about audio sample libraries for like virtual instruments, there are a lot of different ways that you can get into this racket, and most of them are very costly. And the systems for using them have been around for a long time and have not necessarily had their underlying frameworks updated very recently. And so that's why I think this is so exciting. Musio is a product from Cinesamples, which makes some of the more high-end virtual instrument plugins, especially for orchestral music and film music, but they have all kinds of sounds that you can use. And they've been very costly. They've worked in Contact, which is kind of like a universal player for a lot of different kinds of sample libraries. But recently, within the last year and a half or so, they have produced their own sample player and released some of their libraries in a new subscription service called Musio. And so you can get into Musio now for, depending on what kind of subscription and whether you get an education discount, I think it can be as little as $5 a month if you get the education discount. And it's a great deal. You get access to a huge number of sample libraries, and the Musio player itself is extremely lightweight. It goes online and downloads samples like kind of in real time as they are needed, which saves you a lot of storage space on your computer. These things can take up hundreds of gigabytes if you download all of the bits of them. And so this is a really cool new player. It's super lightweight. When I use it to play back things in Dorico, I can load up an entire orchestra of samples for about 12 gigs of RAM, which is like unheard of. In other sample libraries, that's 60, 80, 90, 100 gigs of RAM. So it's super lightweight and they sound very good. It's kind of in active development. They're kind of building the airplane as they fly it in some ways, which can occasionally lead to some frustrations, but I think it's totally worth it, especially for the cost and the utility. And so Musio from Cinesamples, and if you're listening to this and it's still going on, they have a couple of sales right now. You can get a month-to-month subscription of Musio for 99 cents a month for 3 months. So that'll take you, into the new year with some fun things to play with over Christmas break. And then you can also get what they're calling Musio One, which I don't think that they are describing super clearly, but you can think of this a little bit like Avid's perpetual licenses. You pay one time and you get the samples and the tools that are available right now and all the updates that happen for one calendar year from when you activate your thing. And then after that, you don't get updates anymore, but you can keep using the thing forever. And so that Museo One is currently $2.99, is normally $3.99. And so I think that's a pretty good deal. So if you're interested in playing with this stuff, check out Musio.
Awesome. Since we're blurring the line between software and services, and since I actually just left most of these in from last year, do you want to do your Chat GPT Plus one and then we move on to the next section?
Sure.
Sweet.
So we talked a little bit earlier about the hubbub at OpenAI, and I might not have included this if things had gone another way with OpenAI, but it seems like things are back on track there as of this recording on November 24th. Who knows what things are going to look like by the time this goes into your ears. But ChatGPT Plus actually is more than just ChatGPT now, which is the main reason I subscribe to it. It's kind of costly at $20 a month. I don't think I'm going to subscribe to it for more than a month or two a year, but it does give you access to the more advanced chat bot, GPT-4 based chatbot. It also gives you a whole bunch of other capabilities. You get access to DALL-E 3, which is a way better tool than DALL-E 2 was, especially if your image needs to have any text in it. It does really well with text now, which is pretty cool. And you can create your own GPTs by teaching it a body of knowledge from something else that you have, and then you can query it based on that bit of knowledge, and you can just save that GPT that you've created, that little chatbot, and you can name it whatever you want, and you can even make it available to other people, which is really cool. So you could teach, like Robby, you could take your band handbook and throw it into a GPT and then say, if you have questions about whatever, you can type them to the robot, and the robot knows everything about our band program. I've not tried this, but I think we should try it later.
I'm excited about that possibility.
And so anyway, our ChatGPT Plus from OpenAI, $20 a month. I don't know if I do it all the time, but it's fun every once in a while.
I love that idea. All right, we are going to have to do some testing of that later. All right, let's get gadgety. This is admittedly probably the most holiday gifty bit here. I have a love-hate relationship with gadgets. I'm trying to have less stuff in my life, but also gadgets can be useful. And so I'm going to mention a couple here. I, am getting more and more into MagSafe accessories from my iPhone. And I kind of in my backpack have a little pocket of little attachment bits, like my little Apple battery pack extension. I've got a pop socket. And there's one I didn't actually, I'm going to mention this before I get to the one that's the pick. I have this, I really like it. It's made by Anker, and it's like this metal ring that just magnetizes to the back of the phone. And then a little, you kind of bend a little, there's a little ring inside of the main ring that you kind of fold outward. And that is a ring that you can stick your finger in to kind of add some support for bigger phones. But it also can extend enough that your phone can sit almost upright in landscape. So you can prop it up for watching videos or whatever. So I actually am finding that from time to time I get home and I have a MagSafe wallet attachment as well. So I use that at school because it's got my ID in it that gets me into the building. So I kind of just now shove my phone up to the door when I walk in the day, and it opens the door for me. And then when I get home, I take that off, I put on this Anker thing, and then I, if I'm cooking, I open up my recipe app and just stick the phone down on the kitchen counter. Or if I'm watching some YouTube while I'm doing the dishes, I just stick it up on the windowsill. And it's a nice little attachment. Now, also, Anker makes a cool thing that I don't own, but that I've encountered I know a lot of people who do own it, and it's this cube thing that like is a battery pack that attaches to the back of the phone, but that also you can like fold out this little like bit that can sort of like prop it up, kind of like those. What is that smart? Is it the Smart Folio? What's that iPad cover that like folds a little triangle
The Smart
out of the
Folio. Yeah.
Smart Folio? Yeah.
That's the only kind of covers that I have for any of my iPads because I don't need a keyboard. Are you sure that's the Anker Cube?
Maybe I'm
I
mixing
think
it up.
I think the Anker Cube is just a charging thingy. I don't think it's a battery.
Oh, I am mixing it up. Then what am I thinking of? Oh yeah, the Anker Cube. Okay, the Anker Cube is a different product. It's the one that is like a little cube. It is a cube shaped
You're
thing.
thinking of the thing that like folds up in like a Z-shaped thing?
Yeah, kind of. All right. Well, the cube is also interesting. It kind of like is a little boxy shaped thing that out of it kind of folds like an Apple Watch charger. But it itself can charge your phone. It's sort of like an all-in-one charging station, but that fits into a very compact little shape.
So it has like a little little lever thing on top of it that you can fold up and then mount your MagSafe phone to that. And then behind the little folded up thing is another wireless charging spot that you could put an AirPods case that charges wirelessly. And then another little thing slides out that you can put an Apple Watch on to charge it. I think it's a cool looking object. And it's kind of costly, but it's pretty cool. I have a Hyper Dock 4-in-1 charger on my desk, and I would recommend it, except I don't think, or I guess Hyper Juice technically, but it is not available. It's been sold out every time I've looked at it for quite some time. So I don't know if they're going to continue making it or not, but a very, very similar product from Belkin is the Belkin Boost Charge Pro, which is really cool. It's very costly, but it looks really nice. And it's kind of a circular disc that sits on your desk, and on that disc there is a wireless charger that you can use for AirPods or any other Qi charging device, and then there's kind of a T-shaped thing sticking up out of the base, and on one side of the T is a MagSafe charger for your phone, and on the other side of the T is a watch charger. It's really nice. It's costly at $150, but I'm seriously considering it for my desk in my office at school because I don't have such a cool charger for my office there, and I do for my office at home, and I kind of want one in both places.
Okay, I found the actual name of the product. It is called the Anker PowerCore MagGo.
That's a good name.
It is, and it is more or less like a little thin rectangular battery pack, but that has a little foldy, slidey bit that can make it stand upright. So Anker Cube, I'm going to leave the Anker Cube bit of discussion in here, though, because I think there's some people who would find that useful for travel.
Yeah, that's what I would get it for, is for travel. I've nearly purchased it several times for travel. Travel quite enough for that to be worth it to me.
Yeah, I don't right now either. Now, my stationary desk situation is I leveled it up this year. I got a material dock by Studio Neat for just about every desk and nightstand in my life. And this is a very beautifully made product that I believe it's made of cork. And what kind of wood is this?
Probably walnut.
I feel like it's walnut. Yeah. You kind of like slide they don't have any electricity built into it. You slide up the Apple branded Apple Watch charger and MagSafe puck through it, which is cool because I find the Apple branded chargers to be the most reliable and fast. So I like it. It kind of holds them up right. It looks nice. I really like it. I just like it so much that I went out and bought, like I said, I bought them for all of my desks.
I think they're really lovely devices, but I don't like having multiple cables coming out of the back of the thing.
It does create a management issue for sure.
Yeah. That's my only concern there. I do like a lot of other Studio Neat things that we might talk about later. But my next thing, and this is a great, I think also similarly to some other things that we've talked about before, a great stocking stuffer are Apple AirTags. If you don't have these things in your life and you use other Apple products, and that's important with lots of these Apple things, you have to use other Apple products to get the most out of them. But these are little kind of coin-sized things that you can put in anything that you think might get lost or snatched, and you can find it anywhere in the world, as long as there is somebody's Apple device nearby, it will point to it. Because that last bit, because it can work with anybody's Apple device, it doesn't have its own GPS tracker, which is how it can be so inexpensive. But these are only $25 a pop, or you can get a 4-pack, or maybe they're $30 a pop normally. But you can get a 4-pack for $100, and you can get them engraved for free, which is kind of a fun thing to do. So I don't know how many I have. I have at least 4. I have at least one 4-pack of them. I've got one in my backpack. I've got one on my keychain. I've got one that I keep in a piece of luggage. And I've got one on my cat's collar. So they're very, very useful. They're very inexpensive. And I think they make a great stocking stuffer. Do you have anything like that, Robby? Do you use AirTags?
I do. Yeah, I use the one in my bag. I use one in my, let's see, what else do I tag? My keys, of course. I put one in my car. My car has this thing where like you disconnect from Bluetooth or CarPlay, and then it like in the Apple Maps app remembers where you parked. But I like to have it that, be where it like tells you to the like, inch where your car is. Because then if I step out of the store I'm in and it's in a big parking lot, it can like, my phone can more accurately direct me to where I'm going. Right. So I like that. I like them. Speaking of things that I can find the most recent location of, and AirTags. The AirTag technology, the Find My technology, is made accessible to third parties. And I got an Ember smart mug within the past year, which has Find My built into it. So my coffee mug I can find from the Find My app on my phone. Not to mention...
Has that proven useful yet? Have you lost your coffee mug so severely that you need an app to help you find it?
It's usually like really close to me when I take it out. I did use it once and it was helpful. I'll tell you what, we're going to get to in a second, another smart liquid related thing that I wish had Find My. So but the Ember smart bug is cool. It's definitely pretty expensive for what it is, but it does keep my beverage hot for an extra several hours in the morning, and it logs the caffeine I drink into the Apple Health app.
Wow.
I say thank you, Ember Smart Mug. I have the travel one.
Okay.
Now I also have probably this next one I use way more. It is my Hidrate Smart Water Bottle, which logs my water intake to the Apple Health app and lights up fun colors when I am behind on my water goal for the day. I seriously am telling you, it makes me drink more water using this water bottle and this app. I notice, I can see the trends, like when the battery dies and I don't recharge it for a few days. I can see it. Like I'm sorry to report, but like silly little lights and app notifications and achievements are getting me to drink more water.
It's exactly the same reason why your son brushes his teeth.
Exactly. You got to have that external motivation. I don't know how well that pairs with our alternative grading practices conversation from earlier. Right. But it's helpful to me. And it does have this feature where via Bluetooth, it remembers where you last left it. But there was a day recently where I lost it in the band room somewhere. And I was looking for like a solid day. Like I had to go, I went home. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to find my water bottle, but I know it's at school because the app says that it was last connected to my phone at school. Sure enough, like a day later, it was in like one of the instrument cubbies. I must have just sat it there while I was doing something. And the other band director at our school found it. And she was like, is this your water bottle? And I was like, yes, thank you. Do you know what would have been really helpful yesterday when I was looking? Is Find My integration right into the water bottle. So Hidrate, get on it.
Someday.
So
I am not, of the two of us, who I would consider to be the expert in gaming. So I think maybe you should kick off this next set of gadgets. I think you've kind of taken me down in the path of gaming over the last couple of years. I have not been much of a gamer, but I'm now sitting in front of 2 game consoles. So maybe.
I'm happy to be a video game influence in your life. And
you really are, truly.
I know that not everyone loves games, but I do encourage people to do things that are fun for themselves. And games lately are that thing for me. I'm playing a little bit more. I just wanted to shout out some really fun games I've played over the last 6 or so months. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. And I will say this, I will not describe the game more so than I will say that my wife, who is not really into games, has put like over 200 hours into that game since June. So it's very accessible, very fun. for people who are not
And I
technical
also think it's
gamers.
important to note that you can get the console, the Nintendo Switch that this game's on, for not a lot of money. If there are variations of the Nintendo Switch that are pretty inexpensive.
Totally. The new Mario game, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, is a complete delight. Great for the whole family. Worth every penny. If you want something that's the opposite of that, you can play my favorite game of the year, which was actually the recipient of the Game of the Year award, not this year, but last year. And that game is Elden Ring, which I will say is.
You can play that on the Switch?
Oh, no. Sorry,
Oh,
I'm pivoting.
okay.
I played it on the Xbox.
Before you get to Elden Ring, I want to recommend a Switch related thing, and that is so if you have adult size hands like I do, and you try to pick up a Nintendo Switch and play with the controls that it comes with, the Joy-Cons that it comes with, you will hurt yourself because those are not intended for adult human size hands. So I have these like replacement Joy-Cons they're called the Hori Split Pad Pro, and they don't have motion sensors. So if you're playing a game and you're using motion sensors, this will not do anything for you, but it is a delight to play with this thing instead of the Joy-Cons if you are playing on the Nintendo Switch itself and not connecting it to a big screen.
I don't have much to say about Elden Ring other than that. If you're looking to invest your whole life into a video game like it's a part-time job, look no further.
Sounds great. You sell it really well. I do not have any devices that I don't think. I don't have any device that I can play Elden Ring on, so I'm happy to take your word for it. I don't have a Windows PC anywhere. I have a very powerful desktop computer and a very powerful laptop computer, but because they run Mac OS, they can't play a lot of games. And so that's why I got the Steam Deck from Valve. And it is a handheld device that can play most of the games not all, but most of the games in the Steam archives in the Steam store. And so this is how I have been playing a bunch of games, including some games that are kind of notoriously power hungry when it comes to game systems. So I played Cyberpunk 2077 on this thing and it was really fun. I'm currently just starting Baldur's Gate 3 on this thing, which actually can run on my Mac, but Cyberpunk can't. And it's really powerful. You can also plug it into a TV and use it like a traditional parked console if you want to do that. And I've had a lot of fun playing around with it, and it has been a great way for me, who does not usually play a lot of games, to get into some games without spending several $1,000s on a fancy gaming PC. There's also, I should say, as we're recording this, just released in the last like week or so, is a brand new Steam Deck, the Steam Deck OLED, which is the same guts basically with some improvements, in some cases some pretty significant ones, for battery life, but not really for computing power. And as the name implies, a much nicer OLED display. So if I was buying one today, I'd probably go with the kind of middle tier LED model, but I'm going to stick with the one that I have for now because it's really been a delight for me to play some games on this. So I've played, like I said, Cyberpunk. I played Stray, which is a really fun game where you're a stray cat in this like dystopian future. It's really fun. So anyway, that's the Steam Deck, and I'm trying to convince Robby to get one. I think Robby needs a Steam Deck in his life.
Did we discuss whether or not you could play Elden Ring on the Steam Deck?
I have not looked into it, but I bet I can. If it's available on Steam, I probably can.
I mean, I think you're gonna love it if you can. When I said it's like a part-time job, I meant that in the best possible way. Like you can just sink your every last thought into this world.
I just started Baldur's Gate 3, and it's pretty fun so far. And I think it's a similarly huge game.
Yes, similarly engaging and big.
But what I had said, I don't know if you heard me say this at the end of what I said before you stepped aside, was that I'm trying to convince you to get a Steam Deck OLED.
And you're not going to have to try very hard. I feel like at this point it's a matter of when, not if. But I think since I'm playing more games lately, I don't think it's going to be that long in my life before I do a PS5. There's like they've been like remaking the game Final Fantasy VII into a trilogy of modern games, and I really liked the first installment, and the second installment is going to be a PS5 exclusive, and it looks really satisfying.
Yeah, I totally hear that. I did purchase, in addition to Baldur's Gate 3, I purchased a couple of other games in Steam that were on sale. Baldur's Gate was not on sale. It's, I think, still probably too new to go on sale. But I also purchased Dave the Diver and a couple other things that were kind of on my wish list. And I don't remember if Elden Ring is there or not. Let me look. Elden Ring. It is here. It is not on sale. I do have to, I don't know why, even though I'm logged in, Steam can't remember that I am over 18 or whatever, but it seemingly cannot. And it is Steam Deck verified.
If it is compatible, I would be curious how. I would definitely go on Reddit and see how well it runs, because it's a big and pretty game with lots of textures and things, and it's a game where snappy feedback and frame rate, I feel like, contribute more to your success in the game, because it's just a little technical. Like, I set it to favor frame rate over graphics because there are times where, like, one of the the dodge roll, which is the primary defense move in the gameplay, there's like, I forget how many, but it's like somewhere between like 3 and 6 frames of animation where, like, in the middle of that roll you are invincible to damage. So it's like getting the timing of things right is a pretty integral part of having a good experience.
Yeah, I don't know if that's my kind of game. It's where like timing is so critical. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I should give it a shot. Like, that's one of the things that I'm enjoying about Dungeons and Dragons is that, like, it's as slow as I want it to be.
Yeah, I love that too. In fact, I'm really enjoying playing the remake of Super Mario RPG for that reason. It is like a kid's
right, because that's like is that like a JRPG kind of style?
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't
like
played it.
Turn-based, but also very charming and designed for kids, like as an introduction to the RPG. So it is very slow and comfortable by comparison.
Yeah.
But Elden Ring just gets you, like, once you beat your first, like, kind of hard boss where you have to, like, really plan it and, like, do a lot and think about it for days. Once you get that first win, you're hooked. You can't not immerse yourself in this world.
That sounds like fun.
It is fun. Hey, here's some more gifty stuff. We kind of have like a miscellaneous section. Some of this is sort of like in the, like, pens, utilities, like stationery category. I have, over the past year, so Studio Neat, who makes that dock I really like, also makes 2 really, really nice pens and a mechanical pencil called, respectively, the Mark I, the Mark II, and the Mark III. And I love them all so much. I have right here on my desk the Mark I and the Mark III, the pen and the mechanical pencil. And then the Mark II is a pocket version of their pen, and I keep that in my backpack. And they feel really nice. I've done a lot of pen purchasing over the past few years, and of all my nice fancy pens, and some of which are fountain pens, my Mark I is the one it's the one I reach for more often than not.
I agree. I totally agree. I have, in part through Robbie's encouragement, tried fountain pens more than once over the last couple of years, and I just bounce off of them. I'm not willing to do the kinds of fiddly maintenance stuff that is required to have a nice fountain pen. And for that reason, the Mark I really appealed to me, because it is a nice pen, but it's not a fiddly pen. So I like that a lot. It is perfectly round and smooth. It is a delightful just object to hold in my hand, and has, as everyone who's ever touched one is immediately going to tell you, it has an amazingly satisfying click for the clicky end of the pen. So I highly recommend that, and I have them both. I don't know, Robbie, how you have yours situated. Are we gonna click our clicks into the thing? Let's do it. I have them both sitting on my desk in the Studio Neat pen tray, and they have a single and they have a dual pen tray, and it matches exactly the Studio Neat material dock walnut wood finish that Robbie mentioned having for his charging setup earlier. But it's got 2 little channels that you can put a pen in and just keep them on your desk, and it looks quite handsome, I think. There is a single one and a double one. So I have the double one because, like Robbie, I also have the Mark III, the mechanical pencil, on my desk. So they're both available to me right now. And I have the Mark II in my backpack, which is their travel pen.
That's my exact same setup.
Indeed. Do you have the black version of all of them?
I do.
Have you seen the newest super black one that's like black on black?
No.
Uh-oh. I have some good slash bad news for you. Sale $85 black and black.
I'll try to resist. I do like that double pen tray, though. I put the single pen tray, which I previously had, on my work desk because I usually just write with a pen. I don't have much reason for a mechanical pencil at my work desk. There you have it.
Yeah, I very nearly have purchased a dual pen tray for my desk, and I don't have another Mark One, nor do I necessarily feel compelled to purchase another Mark One. I just like having that there, and I have a nice pen and a nice pencil that I use a lot at work. So I might maybe I'll get that and not another pen from them. But it's really cool. One of the things that I write on with my Mark One pens and pencil is the SideKick Notepad from Cortex brand, which is a brand of mostly stationary related things from YouTuber CGP Grey and podcaster Mike Hurley. It is a great landscape notepad. It's for kind of like one-off things that it's not necessarily designed to store things long term. It's a stack of pages that's dot grid, is 12 inches wide and 7 inches tall. It has a very sturdy back and cover, so you can like bring it around. You can carry it into a meeting, which is what I've been doing quite a bit at work lately. The majority of the page is a dot grid, and then over along the right side, there's a number of like list boxes, kind of like lines that you can write maybe like to-dos on if you want, or whatever you want to do in those spaces. And then there's a little circle next to them that you can use to fill in or partially fill in. And that part of it looks very similar to the theme system journal from Cortex, if you are familiar with that. But the SideKick Notepad is a delight. It works really well with the nice pens that I like to pretend that I care about, and so they're really fun. I don't know if you have any of these products, Robby, but I like them a lot.
Yeah, I love the SideKick Notepad. I have one, and it's great.
I keep one, again, have one on my desk at home and one on my desk at school.
Yep, it's my preferred.
They're really good. Yeah, they're really good. The thing I use it for the most is if I'm just having a call with someone or even a conversation in person, to write down a word or two that I want to make sure that I respond to and not interrupt the other person, but I want to make sure that I come back and touch on in our conversation. And it's really nice just to have that sort of thing available all the time to write down. The last thing that's in this section of our outline is something called LightDims. And if you are like me, you probably have a lot of gadgets and gizmos scattered around your home and office that have very bright LED indicators all over them. So if you've got like a router or something, a lot of times we don't get to choose where we put our router, and they're very ugly devices and they have lots of very bright blinky lights. Or if you have a Bluetooth page turning pedal that you use with your iPad, for reasons passing understanding, those have LEDs that are like brighter than the sun on them, that are these like bright blue LEDs. And those can be very, very annoying. So LightDims are sheets of stickers that you can buy, and you can get LightDims in black, white, and silver, which are perfect for attaching to your black, white, and silver electronic gadgets to cover up the LEDs. And you can find these in what they call their original strength, which is just going to, as the name implies, dim the LED but not hide it entirely. Because a lot of times, you know, that blue LED on your foot pedal, you do need to be able to see that your foot pedal thinks it's connected to an iPad or something. But there are other LEDs that you might never need to see, and so you can also get like a total blackout sticker as well that will block out the light, and it looks much nicer than a piece of electrical tape, and has, again, that nice feature where it can just dim the LED and not block it out entirely. So I really like these things. They're super cheap. They're like $4 or $5. They're maybe another good stocking stuffer if you have a nerd in your life, or if you just live with someone who likes to put things all over your house that light up and go bloop all the time, and you are a normal person and don't want lots of things that light up and go bloop all over your house. This is a great gift to give them so that they can cover up all of those stupid lights.
Right on. So I'll do an app pick of the week here. It's a little bit of a sad pick of the week, but I'll say it anyway. So on a recent episode, I talked about all the nonsense that was going on over at Reddit. Due to all of that, my favorite Reddit client on Apple products, Apollo, is no more. But there is a recent update from a developer who makes an app called Narwhal for iOS devices, which is like 50% as good as Apollo was, but it's also like if we like if the spectrum starts with like if Reddit using like the website or the app is like 0 and Apollo is a 100, Narwhal is like at a 50. So it's like really far away from as good as the one I previously liked, but it's a lot better than what I was doing prior to the release of their new version, Narwhal 2, which was using the website or the Reddit app. So I use Reddit quite a lot. I use it to engage in communities of lots of personal interests, but also lots of professional community. I learn about a lot of technology that eventually ends its way into discussions on this show through, you know, the channels and the subreddits that I follow and stay in touch with there. So I love to have Reddit in my life, and Narwhal 2 is currently the best way to browse it.
That sounds great. I need to give it another shot. I have not tried it since its big update recently, but I tried it and ended up, even though I miss Apollo as well, going to the first-party Reddit app, which I do not care for, but, well, just mourn the loss of Apollo. So my app of the week, this is kind of a double pick. I know that I'm not the only sports fan that listens to the podcast, and I like to have a way of checking sports scores that is not the ESPN app or the Yahoo Sports app, which are full of really garbagey ads and really aggressive upsells and lots of dumb videos that I don't care about. The number of times that I have made sound in an otherwise silent room just by opening the ESPN app and tapping the wrong thing is larger than I'd like to think about. And Sports Alerts is a great app for keeping track of scores of teams that you care about, and it is not affiliated with a major sports network, so it can only show you the things that you care the most about. I also love that it doesn't put a bunch of MMA garbage in my face. No offense to fans of MMA. I just could not possibly care less about MMA, and ESPN really wants me to know about UFC 325 or whatever. And so this is a great app. And the best thing is that it does live alerts in a really clever way. So if you are watching American football, you can get a live updating, what do you call those? A live updating notification on your lock screen that gives you the score, the time remaining, who has the ball, and even a little map of where on the field they are and which direction they're going. It's a really nicely done application. It's not amazingly beautiful, but it gives me exactly what I want and allows me to not have anything that I don't want when I'm checking sports scores. Related to that, I follow a couple of soccer or association football teams as well, both in the United States and outside the United States. And while I can follow those in sports alerts, I can follow those even better in another app called FotMob. If you're already a soccer fan, you already know about FotMob. But if you are a new-ish soccer fan, FotMob is amazing. Not only does it have the scores and live alerts just like sports alerts for not just one league, but every league. Like, they do better at this than even the big like ESPN app does for getting scores of kind of like if you want to follow Brazilian Serie A B or whatever, you can do that in FotMob, and you can follow your favorite, third, fourth, fifth tier English football club or whatever. And that's all in here. They do really a good job with stats. They let you know what the lineups are when the lineup cards are turned in. They can show you where on TV you can watch it, which can be a challenge when especially if you're watching international soccer. So FotMob and Sports Alert are great ways to keep up with your favorite sports teams in this special time of year when all the sports seem to be happening at once.
Awesome. We can do music last. I'll give a quick tech tip and just say that in the spirit of playing around with task apps and finding out that it's easy to be a fiddly nerd, and I definitely know that when I get an app, I love to go into the settings and see what it can do and customize it to my liking. But I think there is value in understanding the perspective of a software developer and kind of sitting with an app for at least a couple of uses or a couple of days and just like using it with all the default stuff checked on. So my tip of the week is design things as they are, use things as they are designed to be used. Try to understand the logic and the process of who made the app, and you will still find, especially in education software, that there was in fact no logic behind why it was made the way it was. But sometimes it'll, you can learn from that, even if you go and you like customize things perfectly for yourself after the fact.
And my tip is, if you're not buying LightDims for someone else, buy them for yourself. They will make your life better. Buy these stickers and stick them to things. That is my tip of the week. Cover up the lights. They're annoying.
My music pick of the week is Braxton Cook. And this is an artist who was popping up on my algorithmically created Apple Music favorites playlist, where it plays my favorite stuff, but then sneaks in new stuff. And, I'll notice if something that I haven't heard before comes on, and the novelty of that will sort of rub my subconscious in a certain way, like, hey, this is good and you like this, but this is not something you've heard before. But then there's at times where I'm like, what is this? And I run into the room to see what song and what album is playing. And once or twice over the past few weeks, Braxton Cook has come on. I'm going to give the album Somewhere in Between. This is jazz. Depending on which album you're listening to, there's quite a bit of soul also. I feel like some soul records and some R&B records have a lot of jazz influence. Some jazz records have a lot of soul and R&B influence. I feel like in the Braxton Cook that I've been listening to, both of those idioms are sort of allowed more breathing room. It feels like both are doing equal parts to make the music good. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of been what I'm really connecting with about it.
That sounds awesome. I'll have to check that out. My music pick of the week is, and I know I have used this artist before, but this is a new album, Darcy James Argue, who is an amazing jazz big band composer and arranger, and his band Secret Society has a new album out. It's actually a double album called Dynamic Maximum Tension, which is, the title is inspired by a Buckminster Fuller invention, basically, and the whole suite. This is a thing that he's done a bunch of before. Is another big one that you may have heard me recommend on this program before is Brooklyn Babylon. Another one's Real Enemies, and these are kind of concert length, evening length, multi-movement works for big band, jazz big band. And so Dynamic Maximum Tension is a series of kind of character studies of different early 1900s inventors like Buckminster Fuller. And so this is just a really fun of pieces, and Darcy is, I think, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, jazz composer working today. If you like the work of Maria Schneider, you'll hear a lot of overlap there. It will probably not come as a surprise to you that one of his first big gigs was doing copying for Maria Schneider's band. And a lot of the people in his band also play in Maria Schneider's band. So you'll hear, Ingrid Jensen playing trumpet and a bunch of other really amazing people. Highly recommend Dynamic Maximum Tension by Darcy James Argue.
There's an argument in my mind where it's who is my greatest artistic discovery of the 21st century, and he comes to my mind as someone who I think it was Brooklyn Babylon was maybe around 2011 or 12 when I discovered that album, and it was the first time in a really long time where I was just oh my gosh, this changes everything for me.
Yeah, it's whoa, big band is still happening and people are still doing cool, interesting, creative things in that medium. I think we often think of that as almost and this is horrible. I'm so sorry to people who do this more seriously than me. But for a long time, other than Maria Schneider, I felt like it was kind of a dead medium. We were still just playing stuff from the 50s, right? If it's not, Duke Ellington, it's Stan Kenton maybe. And it's really kind of amazing to listen to all of the incredibly creative things that Darcy does with that medium. Definitely check it out.
Righteous. Hey, I think we made it.
Yeah, man, we did it.
I'm Robby Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. You can find the show's page, show notes for this episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in a podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review this show in the podcast app. It absolutely helps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about it. You can learn more about my music and teaching career at robbyburns.com. I'm all over the internet at Robby Burns or _Robby Burns on most social media sites. On Mastodon, I'm Robby at social.musicedtechtalk.com. Consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community, where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be, and I hope to connect with you there. Thanks to this episode's sponsor, Scale Exercise Play Along Tracks. Be sure to check it out. See you next time.